Today I will be presenting on the Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang and their specific involvement in acts of protest against the Chinese government and how they are specifically political dissidents. What you're looking at right now is an image of a Uyghur Muslim family. They are from the province Xinjiang in western China, an area where the people are more ethnically related to those of Turkic and Middle Eastern descent. Currently, many Uyghur Muslims are being held in detention centers across Xinjiang. They've cropped up in the last couple years and contain anywhere from a couple hundred to a couple thousand prisoners. The men and women held are being held against their will, being forced to do hard labor and be subject to re-education. Over 11 million Uyghur Muslims live in Xinjiang. According to China's 2020 census, that is 45% of the total population of the region's 25 million inhabitants. More than 10 million of those inhabitants are ethnically Han Chinese, the country's majority ethnic population. The remaining are from a majority Muslim ethnic groups including Kazakhs, Uzbeks, and Huis. The primary industries in Xinjiang are that of energy, specifically oil, and cotton. Many of the workers in these industries are unpaid slave laborers, specifically Uyghur Muslims. They're being forced to work in these industries against their will as a part of their internment. The Uyghur Muslims haven't always been under Chinese government control. They actually established their own nation in 1933. It fell a year later in 1934 after Chinese forces came in and crushed the fledgling republic. The Uyghur Muslims were able to start their own nation again. About a decade later, they established the East Turkestan Republic. The East Turkestan Republic was backed by the Soviet Union and was able to operate autonomously from China for about 5 years. In 1949, after the Chinese Communist Party established the People's Republic of China, the Soviet Union backed them in regaining their former territory, and we're left with the borders we have today. The following is a video containing some graphic content detailing some of the protests in 2009. This video details some of the events that took place during protests in 2009 by the Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang. We can see that they were incredibly violent. Many people were injured, and over 200 were killed. These protests erupted as a result of the Chinese government continuing to exert its authority over the region. We can see that the Chinese government exerted massive amounts of force in order to quell the protests, but this only pushed the people further. We can see that the Chinese military has been called into action, and we can see that there's violence erupting between ethnically Han Chinese individuals and the Uyghur Muslims of the region. It was after these protests that the Chinese government started instituting many of the policies that we see today in the region, like forced labor and forced internment. You might be wondering what caused the protests, the riots, and the violence you just witnessed. Well, after China reestablished authority over Xinjiang in 1949, they left the province mostly untouched, till they discovered that the area was full of natural resources. This led the Chinese government to invest a lot of time and resources into the region, moving a lot of ethnically Han Chinese to the area. A lot of the new jobs that were offered in the region were offered specifically to Han Chinese, at least the higher paying jobs. This, alongside cultural suppression, is what ultimately led to the UyghurMuslimsPoliticalDissedents riots in 2009. Now, the violence and protests from 2009 are not what directly caused the internment of Uyghur Muslims. The internment is thought to have begun in 2014, following more political dissidents and Uyghur Muslims fighting for independence. This fight for independence was directly stemming from all of the new jobs and opportunities in the region not being offered to Uyghur Muslims. On top of this, China was launching its Belt and Road Initiative in 2013 and was starting to build the infrastructure in 2014. As you can see above, many of these pathways, trading routes from China, passed through Xinjiang, only amplifying the value that the region has to China. There's no way to know for certain what the CCP's plan or thoughts were, but we can see their actions. We know that they have interned thousands of Uyghur Muslims who have supported independence, Uyghur Muslims who have fought for self-determination and self-government, for the right to practice their religion, and for the right to equal work opportunities in the country that's supposed to support them. I'm about to show you a video that China let British reporters record in one of these facilities. I want you to keep in mind while watching it that it is not representative of all Uyghur Muslim detention centers.
China used to deny it was holding hundreds of thousands of Muslims in giant secure facilities like this one. But now we're being given a tour. The message: these people are not prisoners, but students, willingly subjecting themselves to a kind of brainwashing. Is it your choice to be here?
Yes, I was affected by extremism. I've come here to transform my thoughts.
Government officials watch over every interview. This is how Xinjiang's Muslims, the Uyghurs, the Kazakhs, and other minorities have their thoughts transformed. Rote learning Chinese and laws restricting religious practice, and replacing loyalty to faith or culture with something else. I love the Communist Party of China, this man has written.
It doesn't a place where people have to stay until you allow them to leave sound more like a prison, even if it's a prison in which you can do some art?
I don't know what you mean by prison. This is indeed a training center.
Over the past few years, a vast network of camps has been built across Xinjiang.
My policy recommendation to China would be to allow Uyghur Muslims equal work opportunities in Xinjiang, to also allow Uyghur Muslims free practice of religion and language, and to stop re-education and internment of all Uyghur Muslims. The true underlying issue is the political dissidence of the Uyghur people. Allowing for these three policies to be put in place would quell any issues that the Uyghurs have with the Chinese government. It's unlikely that China would take these policy recommendations, as they've taken the exact opposite approach of re-education, internment, forced labor, and cultural genocide. I appreciate you listening to my presentation, and I apologize for not being able to be present today to present. I hope you found this educational, and I hope you take this opportunity to look further into the Uyghur Muslims. Thank you.